joining us now for another Matich Monday as ESPN college football insider and expert Trevor Matich. And there are a lot of things I love about Trevor. One of them is the fact that win or lose for BYU, he is always ready to go on Monday. Trevor, welcome back after a tough BYU loss. We hope that you managed to find some light in another otherwise kind of dim weekend for BYU.
Yeah, there is some light. It feels horrible, and it was horrible in most ways, but there are also some good things that the Cougars can build off of. And so this was one game, and if they use it correctly, it'll make them better in the future.
Okay, our question of the day. Was that an anomaly, or is that a trend for BYU in the performance against Oregon? Because we saw two very different versions of the Cougars the last 2 weeks.
We did, and the thing is, I think the anomaly, is the defensive line. I mean, Oregon's front seven is one of the best in college football. I mean, they have stars and disrupting playmakers at defensive line and linebacker. And you saw it in that game. And so it was a tough challenge for BYU, but I think they can correct that on the offensive line. To me, the more of the situation they have to deal with is depth on the defensive front. Because without playing with their top two defensive ends, Oregon executed a brutal game plan to attack those defensive ends, to attack those edges now, because not only do you lose the talent of the top two, you lose the depth in the rotation. And Oregon came in there with 6 offensive linemen, sometimes 3 tight ends, with one of them at a fullback. I mean, they had heavy formations, and they just came downhill hard. And BYU's D-line just wasn't able to hold up to that overall. And that created sort of a snowballing effect for the back seven, because normally the defensive line needs to hold up those blockers at the line of scrimmage and allow the linebackers to run. Normally the defensive line needs to get pressure on the quarterback so that the secondary doesn't need to cover for as long as they normally would have to without a pass rush. And the defensive line wore down fairly quickly in this game. I think that's a matter of continuing to build the depth. Now, the depth on the D-line is better now than it has been in a long time. But I think we saw in going against an elite offensive line with just a vicious game plan to take advantage of every weakness in terms of injury, we can see where they need to improve.
Trevor, at what point, speaking of anomalies and trends, should BYU fans start to be concerned about BYU's inability to establish a run game? Granted, they have played Baylor and Oregon, 2 top 15 teams in back-to-back weeks. So I know that it's weighted a different way, but when should BYU fans start to get concerned about BYU's lack of run production over the past 2 weeks?
If it continues after they get Puka Nacua and Gunnar Romney back at receiver, then they should start to get concerned. Because, again, we talk about snowballing effects. This is a very good offensive line for BYU. It is one of the most talented in the country. There's no question. The running backs of BYU are capable. The problem exists when you're down your top 2 receivers and defenders don't respect your ability to burn them down the field on a consistent basis. So they're able to crowd the line of scrimmage. They're able to attack the line of scrimmage in crazy ways with safeties. They're able to do things that they wouldn't ordinarily be able to do if they had a legitimate fear of getting burned over the top if they tried it. And so that's something that hurts BYU the last 2 weeks in not having their top 2 receivers. The thing for BYU fans to watch in the running game is once they get a full complement of edge weapons back, then if BYU can't run the ball, they should darn well be able to consistently burn people over the top. But if they can't do that and they still can't run, now we have a problem.
And certainly BYU, one of the more aggressive teams in scheduling in the country in the first 3 weeks. Not too many teams played 2 ranked teams. Oregon did, BYU did, not many others. Now BYU plays Wyoming this week, that's 3-1, and Utah State, who lost to Weber State a couple of weeks ago by 28. Do you expect BYU to bounce back in a major way as a heavy favorite this Saturday against Wyoming and next week against Utah State?
I do, just because I expect them to treat this week of practice like they would any other. I don't expect them to get down and let Oregon beat them twice. And in watching tape of Wyoming, they will see that they'd better be ready to go. Their preparation had better not be influenced by the negative emotions coming out of Eugene, because Wyoming is a better team than people give them credit for. I mean, they lost their opener to Illinois, but since then they've ripped off 2 or 3 straight Their last game last week was against Air Force. Air Force had been averaging 400 yards on the ground, almost 396 yards on the ground. Wyoming held Air Force to 171 yards rushing and beat them 17-14 with a fourth quarter long drive, after which they stopped Air Force in their attempt to answer that drive. So this Wyoming team is very balanced on offense. The rushing defense has shown to be very capable, and this is nobody's cupcake just because it's not Oregon or Baylor.
It's a Matich Monday on BYU Sports Nation with ESPN's Trevor Matich. I heard a couple of your ESPN colleagues, Scott Van Pelt and Kirk Herbstreit, specifically on Saturday night, talking about BYU's top two receivers being out. Trevor, if Puka Nacua and Gunnar Romney had played against Oregon, how much of a difference would that have made for BYU's offense?
It would have made it a much more competitive game. But I think it's very important that we not make excuses and take away from Oregon what they did. Oregon had played a phenomenal game. The game planning was great. Their individual players did a fantastic job of matching up and then often beating the guy on the other side. BYU fought. They fought hard, and they did a lot of good things in that game. But you've got to give Oregon credit. But if those two guys had been there, if the top two defensive ends had been there, it would have been a much more competitive game, because a lot of people were saying that BYU is just overrated. Well, you got to look more deeply into that. I don't think BYU was overrated. I think they had some obstacles that turned into a perfect storm when they faced a very, very good Oregon team that people disregarded because of what happened to them against Georgia. And keep this in mind, that Georgia's doing that to everybody.
Yeah.
It seems like you can't really judge teams this year by how they do against Georgia, because you can be one of the best teams in the country and still get absolutely annihilated by those Bulldogs. So I think Oregon is a much, 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 much better team than they got credit for, because people overreacted to what happened in week one to them.
Yeah, we knew Oregon was good. We just didn't know how good. Well, it turns out they're very good. We'll keep an eye on that in the Pac-12. Now we look at BYU and the rest of the season, Trevor. I said last week I felt very confident that BYU could go and win this game, win by double figures. They didn't. I also mentioned that if you're going to lose a game for BYU, and let's be honest, BYU was going to lose 1, 2, or maybe 3 games in the regular season at least, is that this was an acceptable loss. Now, the way BYU lost, not acceptable, but an acceptable loss. Now BYU has 1 loss. They hope to take care of business at home and be 4-1 going into Vegas against a Notre Dame team that's really struggled. Cal almost got them at home. They were almost 0-3, and then Arkansas had a real scare at home against Missouri State. What do you see with BYU and the rest of the regular season at this point?
Well, they can get some of their guys back, and if they stay healthy, BYU has a chance to still have a historically great season. But let's not discount Wyoming. Wyoming, if BYU gets that win, it'll be a good win. But we talked about how BYU needs to learn the lessons of this Oregon loss and carry them forward. I think the biggest lesson is the culture, because it was clearly Oregon's day from the very beginning for a variety of reasons, but BYU kept battling. At the end, the starters stayed in. Timeouts were being called. BYU kept fighting, because there's a culture that Coach Satake wants to make sure gets reinforced with every game, with every play. And BYU came up on the short end of the scoreboard on this one against an outstanding Oregon team. But the culture, I think, took a step forward, because it's easy to blow teams out. It's fun. It's great when you're winning. When you're losing, who are you? Do you wilt? Do you take a step back? And BYU did not wilt. They did not take a step back. And so even though they lost the game, I think their culture notched the win because of the way they responded to that adversity. Now, going forward, that needs to show up in preparation. Going forward, that needs to show up in focus, and it needs to show up in camaraderie. And we'll know about that as they go through the rest of this season. But if they take those lessons, BYU certainly has the talent, if they get some of their guys back, to do some historically great things this year, even after this emotionally ugly loss.
Trevor, over the past few weeks, I couldn't help but personally admire what home field can do for a team. In BYU's case against Baylor, certainly the home field advantage was in full effect. BYU goes to Autzen Stadium. The Ducks have won 21 straight games at Autzen Stadium, including beating BYU, and 30 straight in the non-conference. And I was in awe there, too, just how much life it can give to a team. I'm looking at what BYU has in front of them. A couple of home games against Wyoming and Utah State. A neutral game against Notre Dame in Las Vegas. Who knows how many Notre Dame fans are going to show up for that. And then they get Arkansas in Provo. In your opinion, how much does home field matter in college football? Because right now, to me, with this team and this fan base for BYU, it feels like it matters a ton.
Well, I'll give you two of the reasons it matters. One is that players in college aren't as experienced in traveling and how to stay focused when you've got all the distractions of traveling. That's one thing. Another thing for BYU is that you've got the altitude. And that matters. I mean, coaches try to tell their players that going to play at over 4,000 feet doesn't matter. Actually, it does matter. I mean, I'm a pilot, and airplanes, normally aspirated engine airplanes, in other words, not turbocharged, perform differently at 4,000 feet than they do at sea level. It's a big difference as time goes on in those games. And then the big thing for BYU's home field advantage, and it is one of the best home field advantage in college football as far as I'm concerned, is the fans. And I would go to what Baylor fans said after they lost to BYU in Provo. There was a lot of commentary on Twitter from Baylor fans saying that BYU's fans understand the job and they perform it well. So what's the job? The job is to help your team and make it hard for the other team, to make it so loud that they can't function. And that is what BYU fans do. And when you put all those things together, I think BYU has a home field advantage that's greater than many, if not most, other college football teams.
Trevor, as always, great commentary, great insight into college football in general, and certainly to what happened between BYU and Oregon and what the Cougars face moving forward. Thanks, as always, for the time.
Thanks, guys.
Trevor Matich of ESPN on BYU Sports Nation.